I appreciate that so many of you yesterday had such reactions, strong reactions to me saying that you never kneel to the mob and you never apologize for things that you haven't done. And that this should be considered a maxim, a mantra, a central tenet, I guess, of the Freedom Hut. You do not, I mean, look, that doesn't mean you never apologize, right? It doesn't mean that you never admit a wrong. It just means you don't pretend that you're wrong just because there's a mass of people out there that are screaming it at you. And you certainly don't give in to the calls from the mob because you're trying to win them over or avoid their contempt, because trust me, they will hate you just as much. They do not care. It does not matter to them. And people are finding this out the hard way. I see Drew Brees has apologized again for what he said. And not only is it bothersome to me that he has nothing to apologize for, I actually thought that what he said was just excellent, right? It's one thing to say, somebody was kind of close to the line, but they don't need to apologize for that. It's another thing to say what they said was great. What are they apologizing for? What Drew Brees said was fantastic, but we're told he's got to apologize. So again, not once was not enough. Now I'm sorry. Now it's the grovel. Now he's got to keep. And this guy's producer Mark. I mean, he's got to be worth $100 million plus easy, right? I mean, the guy's making $20 million a year.
Easily something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's worth at least tens of millions of dollars. The guy's super rich. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, producer Mark says. He's certainly one of the best in the league today. By the way, I got to tell you, I am like almost halfway through The Last Dance with Michael Jordan and the Bulls. It's amazing. It's just so well done. You've seen it, right?
I've seen the whole thing, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's so good. And it reminds me of what it was like when people played basketball. I'm just going to say it, with a little bit of heart, a little bit of tenacity, a little bit of fire in the belly. Everybody wasn't just sitting on the bench getting $15 million a year to do nothing. I mean, a different time that I can say. And I mean, you watch these clips of what, and for any of you who haven't seen it, go on ESPN on demand and it's a must watch. Even if you don't really like basketball that much, I'd say it's something you really enjoy. But producer Mark, you see those guys on particularly the Pistons, but the Celtics too. These guys like Bill Laimbeer and Kevin McHale, they would just maul people on the court. I mean, it's like if you never see that stuff today.
Yeah, there was a toughness in the NBA in the 80s and 90s that you just don't see today. It's all about finesse and showmanship nowadays and three-pointers.
It's just a big three-point shooting contest. That's what I see when I watch it. It's just all pick and roll, three-point shot, pick and roll, three. I'm always like, this is great, I guess. But back in the day, these guys were banging it out under the boards. It was crazy. It was like, it brings me back because I used to watch that Knicks team that had Patrick Ewing. He was on the Knicks for 15 years, which I didn't even realize it was that long. But Patrick Ewing was the leader of that team. And man, the Bulls were a team in the 90s that when they had their reign, and obviously they won 6 championships, they were a team that you hated, but you had to respect because they were super fun to watch. It was amazing to watch them play basketball. Like, they were so good as a team, and they had the greatest player of all time. Unlike, in my opinion, and now hopefully some folks in KEIBLA aren't going to get mad at me for this one. I'm sorry, I never thought the Shaq-Kobe duo was... Kobe was, and rest in peace, Kobe was amazing and amazing to watch. I thought watching Shaquille O'Neal play basketball was the most boring thing I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
He was just bigger and stronger than everybody. It would be like watching somebody in college playing against a bunch of 8th graders and just dunking on them all the time. It just wasn't fun. I just didn't think it was a good viewer experience, but I had a friend in college. We got drunk one night. We got in a fight over this for like an hour. Because I used to watch a lot of basketball. I just don't anymore. I don't have time. I got to do research for this show. I got to be smarter than all the other shows out there. And that means that I got to just read constantly and do research. But, the fruits of our labors, producer Mark, are paying off. So there's that. You liked Shaq though back in the day?
Of course, he's the best. I'm not going to call him the best center of all time, but he is one of the most dominating forces of all time. Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely top 5 centers of all
Oh yeah,
time.
he's top 5.
Probably
I mean,
top
you
3.
have people like Kareem that you can't, discount.
Right, of course. Well, and there, I mean, I actually, in his day, I remember there was a Houston Rockets New York series, and New York should have won and did not get it done. And it was really because Hakeem Olajuwon was just better than Patrick Ewing. That's
Yeah.
really what it came down to. Hakeem made the big shots, and Patrick Ewing didn't. I'm just going to say it. I don't know. So Hakeem Olajuwon, when he was on fire, man, that guy was incredible. Anyway, it's really, really good series. If you haven't seen it, I'm kind of binge watching it this week, and it's great. I highly recommend it. But back to sports and Drew Brees. Yeah, he's apologizing again. I'm just wondering why he, why he thinks that this is going. Oh, look, I get it. He's in the NFL, and people are going to say, oh, why don't you support the mission here or whatever. I'm still waiting to understand systemic racism meaning what? The systemic racism in the NFL or the systemic racism in policing? Okay, how do we address systemic racism in policing? We already do all this training. We have all these talks all the time. How do we address it? What are we saying that are the cops arresting African Americans all the time and prosecuting them, which is also a prosecutorial issue, then not just a police issue, who are innocent? Is that the claim? I'd be very curious to have anybody who's ever worked in a district attorney's office or a U.S. attorney's office try to defend that claim, that there are large numbers of innocent African Americans who are being prosecuted. So what really are we being told is, wait, that's a good. Producer Mark just sent me that he's got a contract to join NBC Sports as a commentator when he retires. Of course. That's how they get you to really grovel. That's how they get you to just, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't, please, I'll do anything. Because there's big money involved. I get it. I understand. Everybody has their breaking point. It's just like when people say, you see all these movies where the hero is like getting beaten and tortured. First of all, people always get beaten and tortured in movies, when they capture, whoever the hero is, and, he's getting punched in the face, and you'll see like a little bit of blood trickle down the side of his face or something, and you always say, he'd look a lot worse than that, first of all. If you're getting punched and you can't defend yourself at all. But also that people will just be so tough that they won't break. No, people break. That's what they do. And they break physically, and also they will break if you put enough financial pressure on them with something like this. But Brees has issued 2 apologies and had a self-recorded video in which he says, I just want you to see in my eyes how sorry I am for the comments. No. Look, I get it. I understand why he's doing this, but he said nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong, but bending the knee to the mob. Speaking of bending the knee, you don't have to be a famous person to all of a sudden be targeted by the loony left. You don't have to be a famous person. You can just be anybody. And someone, and I believe that this was in a parody. Someone had, or not, it's meant to be like a satire. I mean, the person isn't actually, but went around. It was Producer Mark. Was it in New York City?
Yes.
Went around New York, right here where I am. Guy walks around and tells people to kneel, so that because of their white privilege. Kneel to show that you reject. You're complete strangers. This guy has no idea who these people are. They're just white. And if you walk around now in the current environment, you say, kneel before me to atone for your white privilege. There are a lot of people who will do it. Play this guy. This is just part of the clip. I mean, this has been going all over the place on social media. Play clip 2.
Excuse me. Are you by any way or in any chance a bigot? You are not a racist. I'm not a racist. Okay, so then I work for Black Lives Matter, right? I would want you to get on your knees right now when we hit that corner, because, or else, that just shows the bigoted nation we live in because of President Donald Duck.
I'm really sorry.
But I work for Black Lives Matter. It's my right to.
I'm sorry.
All right. So you're not gonna kneel. So you're gonna be a racist on camera? Is that what you're saying?
Can you please stop holding me?
Just kneel, please. Just one time. That's all I ask. Just show solidarity for what happened to George Foreman. Just please. I mean Floyd. For Floyd.
I know, and I support everything that's happening.
But you just can't kneel?
No, I'll kneel, but I just don't want you to follow me anymore. I'm sorry, I feel uncomfortable. Everything.
Okay, fine. I respect, but all you have to do is just one. Thank you so much.
She kneeled. There are others. There's a whole video of it going around the city saying, are you a racist? You're not a racist? Well, then prove you're a racist. Kneel. Kneel, peasant. Grovel before me. Beg for forgiveness for your white privilege. The man claims to be speaking on behalf of Black Lives Matter. Now, I know this is he's doing this as satire, but it's all you have to do. It's all you have to say. White liberals, I'm so sorry that I'm so sorry about my white privilege, because this is what happens. I have been saying, those of you who are OSS, which we say for Original Saturday Squad, I've been listening to my show for years now, going on, I don't know, this is the 8th year of the Buck Sexton show, something like that. You know that I've always said that the academies, meaning colleges and universities, are the laboratories of liberal insanity, and that it was completely predictable and was predicted, not just by me, by others too, but we knew that as things got even more crazy and Marxist and social justice absurd on college campuses, it would filter out into the broader society. And that's what has happened now. So what used to just be all those stupid college kids, I mean, nobody really, they're all going to grow up and get jobs and pay bills and learn how the world works. Nope, not the ones who think that, the Title IX investigations where men can't call witnesses, don't have the right to have their story told, don't have the right to a lawyer, have a preponderance of evidence standard against them in a sexual assault allegation, for example. Kids that are taught in school that that's fair, that's due process, they don't come out into the real world and say, wow, that was really terrible and unjust. I now have learned. No, now they want that to be the law. Now they want that to be the way it is everywhere. I mean, these schools have gotten even more insane since I was there, and they were crazy when I was there. I went to Amherst College. I mean, that place, if you were a conservative, there were 10 people in the college Republicans. I was one of them. And I was foolish enough, I was naive enough to come out of school and leave that on my resume. Whew. Fortunately, it didn't actually exclude me from the CIA, but I interviewed at a bunch of places while I was waiting to get my security clearance, and I could always tell when they'd see at the bottom, ooh, college Republicans, ew. And I was just like, wait, I thought corporate America, I thought Republicans rule. No, we don't. You know who really rules corporate America now? The people that work in the diversity and inclusion office, who can get you fired for any reason or no reason. That's who rules corporate America now. Even the CEO has to be like, I'm sorry, I will bend the knee to show that my white privilege is not showing. I'm so, please don't hit me. Isn't it just pathetic? Well, don't people want to have dignity themselves? And also, wouldn't any person who is moral and decent want those around them to maintain their dignity too? You know how when you watch something and it's so embarrassing, it's hard to watch because you're so embarrassed for the person? I mean, that's how I feel when I see any individual who does this, I'm going to kneel at the demands, for the demands of the protesters thing. I don't understand how anybody could, and certainly the people on this video who are being blackmailed. They're being told, do this or we're going to put you on we're going to put you on the internet and people will think you're a racist. This is the country we're living in now. And that's why, my position on all this is not, let's just hear everybody out and just take it. It's okay. People will hear everybody out. Let's hear out the movement. Let's see the Black Lives Matter slogans. Let's see the placards. Let's see the marches. Let's have it out. And then I'm going to sit here and be like, what's true and what's not about what they're saying. I'm going to sit here and say they still talk about Mike Brown using lies. I'm still going to sit here and say that they are proposing ideas like defund police that are just moronic. It's not that I don't agree with them. It is stupid. It is lacking in seriousness. And I mean, how else? I see at some points I become overcome with the frustration here. Overcome with the frustration because there are so many people who should be with me on this. So many in the media who are supposed to speak truth to power who are such cowards. They're such cowards. Oh, please don't call me racist. My white privilege is like so upsetting. Please, I don't want to be called racist. People that are millionaires, people that, don't have to worry about paying their bills, they're fine, and, they're in the media, and they got a big platform. Oh, my gosh, Hollywood, all these smug, rich, lib entertainers, they're the worst people on earth. Read a book, you Hollywood idiots. A book. The whole thing. Read it. Learn something.
You see those Republicans walking past in silence while we are in the middle of what some of the most respected generals and admirals, military leaders have said over the past week is an inflection point, a possible constitutional crisis that could remake this republic if people do not begin speaking out against the President of the United States. And yet there is silence from most of those Republicans. There's a certain Dante quote about people remaining silent in a time of a moral crisis. That seems to be the Republican Party right now.
I don't know why anyone listens to... Oh, no, I know why people listen to Joe Scarborough. I can answer my own question. Because he puts on his little fake Republican suit so that he can then trash Republicans for the amusement of Democrats. He's like the Renfield of the Democrat Party, and the Democrats are Dracula. Yes, the master is coming, Scarborough says about Dracula. I don't know. Have you guys ever read Dracula? It's a great, it's a great novel, actually. If you're looking for a book to read these days, I'd read. But yes, Scarborough is the Renfield, and he does whatever his the bosses in the Democrat Party tell him to do. It's very frustrating. But it's a moral crisis right now. The looting is not a crisis. It's just a little looting. It's just, business is getting burned down. No big deal, right? The big problem is that the psychopaths that have no idea what they really want and that are mobbing and looting and going crazy occasionally get sprayed with some pepper spray. That's the real crisis, according to Scarborough, which he probably tells us from his mansion in Florida.
They've treated police officers with such disrespect in New York City that I am stunned. I've never seen that level of disrespect to a police officer. Now, I come from a different time and place, but a police officer, you wouldn't dare disrespect a police officer. But this is at a level that is just inappropriate, unconscionable. So it's complicated. There is not going to be a simple answer.
How about show respect to cops? That would be step one for me. How about just say that, Governor Cuomo? They don't. My time would be different because you'd never do this to police. All right, why not really call this out? It is completely contemptible what is happening right now on the streets of major cities, particularly New York. I mean, there's so much of it going on. The media doesn't really cover where all the riots happen, where all the stuff. You hear little bits here and there. In New York and in D.C., they're so big and there's so much destruction that you'll at least hear about it. But in other places, you won't necessarily. But I thought that this was only about ending systemic racism. But now it seems like it's about hating cops. But, this isn't the first time that's come up. What did Black Lives Matter the last time turn into? Largely a movement that was anti-cop. I'm not saying there weren't any conversations that happened or there weren't any policy discussions that came from it that might have been somewhat useful. Fine. But what if you're asking me what mostly was the result of it? Some very nasty riots, right? The destructive riots that happened in Baltimore and St. Louis. A bunch of cops got killed. And eventually people figured out that this is really about the cops are the bad guys. That was the underlying thesis for all of it, that cops are bad. And when you see a statistic, if you think that 9 African Americans who are unarmed, that does not mean not a threat, by the way, but 9 African Americans who are unarmed killed in a country of 325 million people with over 10 million arrests a year. If you think that if you're going to point to those 9 unarmed black men being killed and suggest that is a national crisis that requires the shutdown of cities, that justifies looting and destruction, there is no reasoning with you. There's no way to reason with you. That's crazy. That's crazy. And if people in the press were honest, they would say that. And there's no solidarity marches for the 7,500 African Americans killed almost entirely by other African Americans in cities across the country year in and year out. Why don't those lives matter as much? Oh, I know what they say. Because this is about the state and about all this kind of like Marxist rhetoric about the state. If the state was really systemically biased in the way that Black Lives Matter pretends, the number of people killed would be a lot higher than 9. Right? The numbers don't lie. But no. Just take things, decontextualize, inflame, take things out of context, abuse it, use it, whatever you have to do to gain leverage over your political opponents. That is what this is all about. And I'm never going to let it go. And I feel like this is one place I apologize for all, because you are living in more free states for the most part. We got New York listeners too, and New Jersey. But the fact that I'm still in this little corner of totalitarian idiocy, where we're still on lockdown here, we're still not having an economy, we're still not doing anything. For what? Unless you're a protester, then you just run wild. Then you do whatever you want. But for other people who are adult enough, mature enough to understand that we have to get the economy going again and we have to live our lives again, nope, no help from the authorities for us. To say that I have contempt for our leadership in this pocket of the Northeast is a dramatic understatement. But I also have contempt and amusement. And amusement at the problems facing the New York Times. This is great. This is fantastic. Because, I mentioned to you before that the campus activism, which is just these people are irrational. It's not, they don't work based off of evidence and truth and logic. They work off of emotion and resentment and I'm upset. That is the primary method that they use to determine what policy should be and how they communicate. They have now been hired at places like the New York Times, and even the old guard liberals, the boomer liberals is what even the boomer libs at places like the New York Times and like the Washington Post are in a little bit of shock right now that the stuff that they've, and they're completely responsible for it. Don't misunderstand me. I mean, when some of us would say, hey, the campuses have really gotten, this is a toxic, totalitarian mindset that they have. I mean, these are now really radical cultural Marxists that are coming out of the top universities. The person that threw a Molotov cocktail at a cop car in Brooklyn went to Princeton and NYU. These are people coming out of the top places. And then, by the way, they're the top. That's all also. Don't even get me into that, all right? Why'd you get in? That's a question you should ask anybody that goes to an elite school. Why'd you get in? Some people will say it's because of my great grades and I'm such an impressive student. a lot of people won't have a very, very compelling answer. And those are the ones where you got to say, oh, mommy and daddy. Oh, a lot of that in media, by the way. Anyone that you think anyone in media, I mean, you've got like people with famous last names like Chris Cuomo, who went to Yale University. And the guy's a moron. Yale's the hardest law school in the country to get into. Yale Law School is the single toughest for admissions. Chris Cuomo, does anyone think Chris Cuomo is a smart guy or a good lawyer? Hey, what does it say you got to peaceably assemble? I mean, other than the First Amendment to the Constitution, you're right. It doesn't appear anywhere. But his last name's Cuomo. And these schools are totally, they can't get enough famous Democrat politician kids. They love that. They love that. But a lot of the people you'll see in media, if you can find out where mommy and daddy went to school. I mean the ones, the ones that are like in their 40s and 50s now, find out where their parents went to school. Because they'll be like, oh, well, I went to Harvard. You're like, well, are you the third generation in your family to do so? So anyway, yeah. My dad went to Harvard Business School. I didn't go to Harvard. So there you go. Where were we? Oh, yes. New York Times, completely insane. The wokeness has come for them, and they don't know what to do about it. Here is a woman who is a computer programmer at the New York Times. And here's what she wrote. Yesterday, 24 of us who make New York Times publishing tools called out sick in solidarity with our black colleagues and in protest of the Cotton op-ed. I was harassed on Twitter all day for it. Guess what? Today, there's a virtual walkout of 300 plus of us who work outside of editorial. That's right, folks. A walkout from the New York Times for publishing a United States senator's editorial about a public policy issue that 58% of the country agrees with him on. 58%. How many really contentious issues do you get almost a 60% agreement? Not a lot. Not a lot. And the New York Times has apologized now. There's no correction they've appended to the story because there's no correction to be made. There's nothing wrong with the Cotton editorial. But there's something else that has been missed in this that I want to interject into the conversation right now. I want you to remember this. The libs, the psycho left, created this problem that we see of the false narrative of young black men being hunted systematically by cops and murdered and all this. That's just not, it's not supported by the facts. It's not true. It happens, but a lot of things happen, and we don't base all public policy off of something that is the equivalent of a lightning strike in terms of probability. But this is what I want you to remember. The left created this mess. This nightmare is a creation of the left right now. And notice that in the response to it, which is, so they create all this disorder and lawlessness, and the politicians are cheering it on, and the public health experts are, oh no, this is really important. Like the total idiots they are. Maybe if they had spent a little bit more time studying, maybe the public health experts that are lecturing us all about what to do, if they were, a little more on it and a little less social justice involved, we would have a cure for this thing already. I'm just putting that out there. I feel like a lot of them are a little too, fast to go for the hashtags and not to focus on, excuse me, can we actually deal with the public health issue and not have you pretend that because you are an epidemiologist that we should listen to what you think about the economy or about race relations or anything else. I mean, we'll listen, but I'm allowed to say it's stupid. You have no particular expertise on these matters. And actually don't have to listen. You're just allowed to say, right? That's another difference too. People don't get to demand. This is one of my favorite things about libs on social media now. But this will make your whole experience online better. No one gets to demand your attention. I have all these blue checks all the time trying to come at me with some. I don't pay them any attention. They're morons. I don't have to respond to them. I don't have to deal with them or interact with them. They're idiots. People that write me nasty messages. I can tell in the first 3 words whether someone's a psychopath online. Beep, done. Producer Mark, I told him the same thing. Just beep. I don't need this crap. People are losers. They're idiots. I don't care. Do yourself that favor. Don't think that anyone. There's a difference between someone having the right to write something or say something and you feeling the obligation to engage with it. Cut all that stuff out. All that stupidity and negativity and viciousness and the left is just soaked in that these days. And they have been for a long time, but particularly bad right now. Just, shut it down. Just shut it down. But they created this problem, and now they complain about the response to it. So they set up the crisis, and then they turn to, oh, your response to the crisis is so bad. Look what you're doing. How about don't create a crisis? That would also be helpful. Any response? No responsibility for that whatsoever. You have this New York Times walkout, which just goes to show you anybody who claims the New York Times is not a partisan rag is a liar or a moron. There's no way to get around this. There's no violation of journalistic standards or integrity in the Cotton op-ed. Nothing. They just don't like the idea that the military could be called in to suppress riots and looting. The military is not going to do a thing to people who are protesting. Protesting is fine. You know why the riots and looting happen? Because the message of these protests is not coherent enough to bring about any change. That's really the truth. That is underlying with all of this. What do they want? They don't know. Oh, I love this other construction too of this construct of put it on you. You have an obligation to end systemic racism. Okay, how? Do I have an obligation to end meanness too? And do I have an obligation to end cruelty? Well, I have an obligation not to do those things myself, but is it on me to make those things across the world go away? And if I don't do that, you're going to tell me what to do? You're going to make me bend the knee? Don't let them get away with this nonsense, folks. I know there's so much social pressure right now. And it feels so good. I just want to be an ally. I just want to... No, be an ally to truth, justice, dignity, courage, decency, kindness. Don't be an ally to the whims, to the demands, to the idiocy of the mob. Don't.
So for our part in the damage to civility, for our part in racial bias, in excessive force, unacceptable behavior, unacceptable language, and many other mistakes, we are human. I am sorry.
That's the commissioner of the NYPD. Bending the knee. I mean, now, you could say that maybe that this is smart. Maybe this is worthwhile. He's got to... Look, community relations with the police force are important. I understand all that. But does he think that the protesters care that he apologizes? They don't care. Doesn't matter. De Blasio himself is out there, we're going to do things better, and we're going to, and they're all booing him. And that's Commie de Blasio. Commie de Blasio is the biggest ally these left-wing radicals could ever hope for running the biggest city in the country. And they boo him. You think they just view the police commissioner as de Blasio's little stooge. You think that they're going to think that this is any better now? You could apologize every day. You could bend the knee every day. It doesn't matter because you aren't actually apologizing for anything you have control over or that you have done. Apologizing for other people is meaningless. I could sit here all day. I apologize for, the viciousness of the First World War. I just want to say that to all of the people that are still upset about what happened in those trenches, I just want to, this has become this like ritual we all have to go through of, we have to do these apologies. You apologize for things you have done or that you had control over. That's it. You're running around and does anyone think that this is going to make the protests stop or feel better or anything else? No. Because what really is the point here? What is the purpose of this? No one's really clear. It's just this big emotional outburst that we're all supposed to bow down to. Oh, we're so sorry, whatever you say. Why? No, I know this is all, this is just logic, but to some people it's so hateful because they've been programmed. They've been brainwashed into thinking there's some rage that they're allowed to feel about, the system. When I tell you what I don't like about the government, I tell you what I don't like, what I want to change, what is wrong. If you want change, you have to know what change you seek. You have to have some idea of who's responsible for the problem. To just say, this is what I meant by, do I have to apologize every day for cruelty around the world? Is that on my shoulders? Because that doesn't seem that different to me than going around asking people, demanding people apologize for systemic racism. Racism is bad. We all know it. Is any one person responsible for the racism that exists in humanity? Give this some thought. Let me know what you guys think.